The colored cover of Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo Chapter 9, titled Dura Valbabidi Mechica Part 2, features Maru, Cross, and Dura hanging out. We can also see that the Samurian ship is behind them, and Deborah's eye is overlaying the water. From there, we have two silly comic strips. The first one is Go For It Yuka Okotsu. In school, Yuka was told that her brother and a girl named Mizuho have a crush on one another, at least according to this girl's older sister. But Yuka was told not to tell anybody, which is something she mulled over for a while. After school, Yuka was welcomed home. She rationalized that as long as she doesn't tell anybody, then she should be able to tell anyone. So she went somewhere and told a little panda bear that Tsurugi has a crush on a girl named Mizuho. The second comic strip is Shake It Off Tsurugi Okotsu. One day, Yuka went to tell Tsurugi that it's his turn to clean the cursed warehouse. The kid totally forgot, so he got to work. Then, from behind, someone asked him what he likes about Mizuho. Tsurugi turned, and Panda smiled. So Panda decided to stick around and treat Yuta and Maki's family like his own. We begin things with the information that every being on Simuria possesses a third eye that is the source of their Roluluka, which is a Simurian version of cursed energy. But only Rumelians like Cross and Maru shed tears from their third eyes when Akalian dies. For other Simurians, upper tears only fall when they're born or when they die. The experience of shedding tears is so taxing on the brain that it can be fatal. There's no specification as to whether or not additional third eye tears have any benefits. It makes total sense that the Rumelians would revere the Kalians as sacred beasts. Kalians kill anyone besides them, and their deaths can be mutual. The village elder delivered the grave news that the daughter of Deskunte's chieftain was killed by a Kalian. Dura waited for the other boot to drop. Cross didn't like where this was headed. The old man explained that Kalians were wiped out from Deskunte territory many years ago, so they claimed that such a tragedy would have never happened if the Rumelians hadn't provoked the Kalians. As such, the chieftain demands 90% of their territory, including the canal, in exchange for his daughter's life. Otherwise, they would attack. Osuki shouted that there was no way they could get away with such a bogus claim. But unfortunately, the Deskunte envoy had already brought word of an official challenge to a duel. Deskunte don't decide outcomes through war. They declare war once the outcome is a certainty. On Simuria, those who hold the most authority tend to also be the most powerful people. The Rumelians were no different, but the Deskunte take things to the point where whoever's strongest is the one who is right. They settle such matters through one-on-one fights between chosen champions. In the case of victory, the Deskunte have the right to crush their opponents until their goal has been achieved. If they lose, they accept the demands of their opponents and end the dispute. Osuki was relieved by the mention of a duel. After all, they have Dura on their side. Maru and Cross were confused. Some of the guys realized that Maru and Cross were too young to remember. Before their village was destroyed, the Deskunte held a fighting tournament, and Dura was the winner. Yet the strongest Rumelian was stoic. Maru was impressed. He already knew that Dura was strong, but was still amazed. Others chimed in that even a Deskunte war chief lost to Dura. In fact, all the matches were rigged to favor Deskunte, but Dura still came out on top. They were certain that Dura must be the strongest Simurian, but Dura told them to knock it off. He explained that there are plenty of people who didn't take part in the tournament. In hindsight, Cross admits that he should have thought more about why Dura never told him or Maru anything about the tournament. But back then, he asked the elder if they couldn't just refuse the duel. That wasn't an option. The Deskunte would be even more ruthless against those who betray a warrior's duty. So refusal would be no different from losing, if not worse. In the past, Deskunte attacked them and they weren't allowed to fight back. Now they're being forced to fight or have their entire tribe wiped out. As such, Dura reluctantly agreed to fight. Sometime later, the day of the duel had arrived, and the outcome became clear from the moment the Rumelians caught sight of Deskunte's champion. Maru's expression didn't waver, but Cross was broken. He felt like his heart was numb, the presence of his own limbs became foreign, and his brain was being scraped raw. This unforgettable experience was by far the worst feeling he has ever had. Dabura stood before them, and just like that, the arena was revealed to be the wake of a living man. Cross shouted that Dura can't win. He begged his father figure to just run away with them. Otherwise, this monster would kill him. Cross shouted that no one would blame him for running away. Their people were already eternally grateful to him. He continued to beg until Dura cut him off with a smile. Dura greeted Dabura, someone he hadn't seen in a while. He asked how Dabura's little sister was doing. The powerhouse didn't look him in the eyes. Dura paused for a moment. He asked if she had been taken hostage. Dabura expressed that he doesn't know what to do. His people were forcing him to fight Dura to the death. Dura waved away his concerns with a smile. He accepted that the outcome here isn't as important as the request he has for Dabura. Dura took a moment to explain. When he was finished, Dabura accepted. With that done, Dura decided to use the rest of his lifetime addressing the audience, as more tribes than just the Deskunte and Rumelians had assembled. Dura acknowledged the strife between his tribe and the others on account of their Kalyan religion, but he wanted to stress the fact that the exile of the Rumelian people a decade ago wasn't some sort of religious war over the Kalyans. Staring directly at the Deskunte chieftain, Dura shouted that it was an invasion in pursuit of resources, namely Mool, a special ore capable of converting Rololuka into various forms of energy. Chatter picked up about the major profits that Deskunte were making from their mining, so they were likely to be doing the same in the wake of this whole death of the daughter thing. But that sort of insinuation was very dangerous. Dura wasn't trying to make a big deal out of it 10 years later. However, if a war begins over economic ambitions, but is framed as a religious war, then other tribes are less likely to involve themselves. They'll just assume that there's something they don't understand going on and hesitate to help the oppressed. That at its core, religion is meant to be rooted in everyday life, not some grand cultural ideology. The Rumelians aren't asking them to respect their religion itself, but rather their way of life that grew from it. Dura lowered his head while saying that Rumelians are only human like them, so he begged them to help his people and accept them as neighbors. In response, Deskunte's chieftain ordered Dabura to begin. What came next was a gut-wrenching display, one that broke the Rumelians. Suddenly, Maru leapt up like a crazed beast, ready to pounce. This peripheral sight made his brother Cross freeze. Maru rushed at Dabura, so Cross grabbed his twin and slammed him into the ground. He screamed at Maru not to be an idiot, but Maru didn't care. He shouted at Dabura with all his fury. Dura was already dead, but Maru was especially upset because it was so clear that Dabura held back. He didn't fight with his full power. Maru cursed him for claiming to be a warrior, despite disrespecting Dura like that. And unexpectedly, Dabura apologized. He approached them and explained that he didn't want to harm Dura's face. They later learned that Dura was Dabura's best friend. Before the Rumelian exile, they pushed one another to become better warriors. So this was the reunion Deskunte arranged for them after 10 long years. Dabura hated attention, so Dura was the only one who knew how strong he actually was. Laid in his casket of flowers, Dura's third eye wept. His face and hands were blemishless. Back when they were kids, Cross pointed out how Dura always says the word neighbor. He asked Dura what the word means to him. Maru cheerfully said that they're people who are next to you. His brother barked that he was asking Dura. Dura's response was one we already know, that neighbors are friends who understand why things that matter to you are so important. That made Cross remember Dura's final plea for the other tribes to accept them as their neighbors. Unfortunately, Cross couldn't bring himself to accept them as neighbors either. because Dura was the most important thing to him and Maru. The twins held the helm of the Kalyan etched casket. With that done, they wondered what they would do now that the Deskunte were taking their land. If nothing else, they would need to evacuate the women and children. But even if they do that, Cross pointed out that their remaining lands are barren. Growing things wouldn't be possible without the connected waterway. Illness was bound to spread again. Osuki suggested that if they're bound to die either way, maybe they should just fight back. He would gladly stick it to the Deskunte one last time. Or at least that's what a warrior would say. Jabaloma contributed that the responsibility of a warrior isn't to fight to the death. It's to protect those who can't protect themselves. Ever the optimist, Maru asked the others if they think another tribe might help them out after Dura's speech. But since the Deskunte would be invading tomorrow, there wasn't much hope. The fact that someone wanted them dead overwhelmed the Rumelians with both fear and rage. But that's when an unexpected visitor arrived, Deskunte's champion, Dabura, and he was joined by a cowled figure who we may assume to be his little sister. Dura told Dabura that he left something behind for the Rumelians, and what he showed them from there was staggering. There was a vast wealth of Mool ore. Seeing it made the twins remember when Dura told them not to touch certain rocks in the past. Cross realized that this was all the Mool Dura had found while digging the canal. So this canal plan of his was ingenious on so many levels. Dura surely kept it a secret from them so Deskunte wouldn't find out. And since the area is Kalyan territory, Deskunte never found these resources. Jabaloma was sure that Dura planned to rebuild Rumel with all this Mool, while Osuki was sure that Deskunte would find it in no time. He wondered if, in the end, everything they did was just a big waste of time, while Maru's eyes widened as he touched ore that began to glow. In the past, after learning why Dura was building a canal, Cross asked the man why he made the decision in the first place. Dura thought about it. He replied that all cities and villages were built on the ideals of someone once upon a time. That even when Dura leaves this world, the canal will remain. Then someone else would build something that improves Rumel yet again. Such a cycle could make them all one, which Dura thinks is pretty amazing. He figured that the two kids might not get it, but Maru was in awe, and so was Cross. With those memories in mind, Maru let his fellow Rumelians know that their efforts weren't a waste, just like the canal wasn't a waste. Instead, this is the path forward that Dura left for the Rumelians. Rolaluka resonated between Maru and the ore, and he extended a hand to his brother. An astonished Cross took it and began to glow as well. Everyone else was speechless at the sight of their Rolaluka. The ore began to float and be enveloped in light. The resources spun all around the Rumelians. Jabaloma was stunned. This was something with even greater purity than regular Mool. Maru called on his friends to all search for a place where they can live together safely. Osuki didn't believe there was anywhere like that, but Maru was sure that there must be a planet out there where people like them can live. They just needed to leave Simuria. But leave the planet? Yeah, now he just sounded crazy. Even so, Dabura agreed to go with them. Apparently, he promised Dura that he would protect the Rumelians. And with that, it was time for them to go. Maru created their mothership out of the ore to go beyond the stars and find their neighbors. Gege is cooking, guys. I am really impressed by this man's writing right now. And with this chapter, we finally have an idea of who our major antagonists will be. The Deskunte won the duel, so according to their laws, they have the right to stomp on the loser until their goals have been met. Deskunte's objective is the acquiring of resources and seemingly the ethnic cleansing of the Rumelians. Instead, the Rumelians made off with a treasure hoard's worth of exceedingly pure mule and are still very much alive. After all, we know that there are now almost 50,000 of them on the ship. Beyond that, they challenged Deskunte's authority and integrity in front of the other tribes and took one of their strongest fighters. As the highest authority of this strength-based imperialistic tribe, there is no doubt that a Deskunte chieftain is a powerhouse. So between that, Mahito, and the higher-ups, the Rumelian and Okotsu siblings will really need to speed up their growth. As always, I'm Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.